Miss Melody Madhavan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I'd like to ask the Minister of Information, Communication and the Arts on firstly the rationale behind the signing of ACTA, the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement by Singapore, as it threatens free software, especially online media, by creating a culture in which the freedom that is required to produce free software is seen as dangerous and threatening rather than creative and innovative. Secondly, whether the stifling of innovation, which will affect our economy, is worth it. And thirdly, since ACTA encourages service providers to collect and provide information about suspected infringers by giving them a safe harbor from certain legal threats, will it in turn jeopardize the media freedom of our people? Thank you.
Minister of Information, Communication and the Arts.
I would like to thank the Shadow Minister of MICA for the question. So first of all, I think there are a few misconceptions that we need to clear out. So firstly, the Shadow Minister of MICA actually claimed that ACTA, the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement, threatens free software, especially online media, by creating a culture in which the freedom that's required to produce free software is seen as dangerous and threatening. But the truth is that ACTA is not about, threatening free software. It is all about ensuring that the intellectual property rights of producers are protected. It is about protecting the rights of those who produce music, movies,
Minister, please stop. I have a point of information. Yes. Yes. Minister, you need to be a bit louder. Talk into the mic.
Okay. Okay, so I'll repeat what I said earlier. That ACTA is not about threatening free software. It is about ensuring that the intellectual property rights of producers are protected. It is about protecting the rights of those who produce music, movies, or anything that is prone to intellectual property theft. Under the current legal framework, their works are already protected under copyright law. ACTA merely provides the additional provisions for copyright protection in the digital environment. The so-called free software mentioned by the opposition actually refers to acts of piracy that are illegal. Anyone can still produce free software if they are willing to. ACTA does not interfere with this decision. All it does is to better secure the interests of those who are unwilling to see their work disseminated in the internet for free and without consent. So I don't really see the point of how ACTA can stifle innovation, because in fact it will actually create an environment that encourages innovation, because the works of individuals are now better protected. Also, ACTA will only affect the economy in a positive manner, because I would like to bring to light the fact that many countries have already signed ACTA thus far. This includes major economies such as USA, Japan, South Korea, and 22 other European Union countries. So these are nations whose economy pride itself on innovation, creating, and they signed the ACTA because it is beneficial for their knowledge-based economy. Like what the Shadow Minister of Education said earlier, Singapore is also a knowledge-based economy, and so ACTA will benefit us too. So the next misconception that this Shadow Minister has is that ACTA encourages service providers to collect and provide information about suspected infringers by giving these service providers a safe harbor from certain legal threats, and this may then jeopardize media freedom. So the thing about this is that, first of all, this statement is made by Nick Anderson, who is with Ars Technical, and he actually discussed the possibility of such a consequence. And what we are saying is that we acknowledge that the purpose of ACTA is really to make sure that service providers will be proactive in ensuring that in protecting their own interests, in ensuring that actually giving information to the government about suspected infringers, so that we can better protect and uphold our copyright law. Because we need to remember that our ultimate goal is really about protecting copyright. And ACTA is not a new law. It only offers tougher regulations. The basic legal principles remain the same. Any websites or media that does not infringe with copyrights will be safe and will not will not actually be jeopardized in any way. And we also need to understand that media freedom is not absolute. We may have the right to say anything we want to, but it comes with regulations. And just because you can say anything, just because you think you have the right of free speech, it doesn't mean that you have the right to infringe on someone's work and to use someone's work without their prior consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Finally, the last question for question time, Ms. Desiree Kang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. This question is again directed to the Minister for Information, Communication and the Arts. I'd like to question the necessity of the NDA's existence because censorship of films and multimedia is getting increasingly irrelevant given the fact that A, Singapore is working to build a global arts culture and the lack of exposure to controversy or genres that test societal waters stunts this growth. B, the money used to upkeep the NDA could be put to better use elsewhere. Why must it be put into a board set up simply for the censorship of media? C, the heavy restrictions imposed on films portraying homosexuality, such as restriction from suburban cinemas, reflects a hypocritical stance by the government on this issue. D, censorship is a hindrance to fostering social sensitivity. There is a need for exposure to important social areas that, while controversial, will stimulate the viewer to think critically and independently regarding these issues. E, because banned material is openly found and discussed on the internet today, censorship is becoming increasingly obsolete given that society has grown exponentially into a complex and sophisticated population that should all the more be encouraged to have their own stand on such issues themselves. Thank you.
Minister Amika.
First of all, I would like to point out that MDA is not all about censoring films and multimedia. There are 6 guiding principles of MDA, including fostering a pro-business environment for industry players, ensuring fair market conduct and effective competition, safeguarding consumers' interests, increasing media choices for consumers, upholding social values in tandem with societal expectations, and fostering a cohesive and inclusive society through quality content with wide reach and impact while promoting nation building. I'd also like to add on that, to further prove my point, that between 2010 to 2011, the job scope of MDA include revitalizing China and Singapore media ties. So what happened is that MDA actually signed an MOU with the China International TV Cooperation and the China Radio Film TV Program Exchange Center for program exchanges. And this is they also promoted and marketed Singapore as an ideal filming location to international filmmakers at the American Film Market in November 2010. They also helped to promote regional media ties. For instance, 2 music variety programs were also co-produced separately with Malaysia and Brunei. The programs were broadcast in Singapore as well as the 2 countries, raising the profile of Singapore's performing talents among the audiences across the region. And in terms of local films, MDA actually set up this Salon Integrated Medium Fund in 2008 to help fund local film production. And Singapore films also continue to do well on the international film circuit. Director Lau Zhe-kai, Red Dragonflies clinched the special jury prize at the Jeonju International Film Festival, and a selection of Singapore films, including Glenn Close, The Blue Mansion, and Boy Kong's The Day, was screened at the 12th Taipei International Film Festival. So what all this really shows is that MDA is not just about censorship. Censorship forms a very small part of what the Media Development Authority do. And no other government departments are actually available to replace the role of MDA. So I don't think that MDA should, that there should be questions with regards to MDA's existence. And because the questions seem more focused on censorship, let me first address on the first point with regards to how censorship stunts the growth of Singapore building its own arts culture. With regards to this question, we need to understand that there needs to be a balance when we think about policies. So maybe, censorship can affect the growth of the arts culture. But what can be done about it? MDA has actually put in many efforts to try and enhance arts culture in Singapore. We invest in films. We actually help to promote homegrown films and actually encourage them to go onto the international stage. So these are efforts that we make to actually promote our art scene. And censorship, there's no concrete evidence to suggest that censorship is actually deterring the growth of our art scene. On the other hand, if we do away with censorship altogether, we'll then go against the guiding principle of MDA, which is to uphold social values in tandem with societal expectations. And I'll elaborate this further in the next 2 points that I'd like to address. So the next point I'd like to address would be with regards to MDA and how it actually goes against homosexuality stance displayed by the government. Well, I'm not sure what this really refers to, because MDA stance on homosexuality is actually consistent with the nation's stance. Let's look at Section 377A of our Penal Code, that any male who in public or private commits or abets the commission of or procures or attempt to procure the commission by any male person of any act of gross indecency with another male person shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 2 years. So this clearly reflects our government's stance against homosexuality, and MDA's program so far have been aligned with this stance. So on the next point with regards to how, because censorship leads to a lack of exposure, and this will prevent the viewer to think critically and independently. So what we say to that is that the reason why we censor is because some issues, like the debate on homosexuality, is very sensitive to a large group of people who live in a conservative Asian society Singapore is. So when you talk about sensitive issues, they are very, very controversial. And even in very liberal nations such as the United States, there's still an ongoing debate about whether homosexuality should be legalized, whether people can declare that they are homosexuals and so on. So we need to understand that because Singapore is still developing, we are not a society, we are not a very mature society yet. We are still going on to this, we are still trying to develop the mindsets of our people, and at this point in time, the societal values is still very conservative. We're not prepared to open up to accepting some controversial issues like homosexuality. So MDA role here is tasked to make sure that the media scene, the art scene in Singapore, the film, whatever films that are being played and so on, are in line with what majority of the people thinks, because they can be quite resistant to the idea of controversial issues. And we need to understand that MDA is really a specialized organization, and that alter policies to suit the needs of our society. So on the last point with regards to how censorship no longer holds the purpose of preventing society from craving into social ills due to the internet, what I'd like to say to that is that censorship is actually present in the internet. We have censorship against pornography, for instance, and even in the internet, there are actually regulations in place. So the influence of the media cannot be understated. We do not want our young to be unwillingly exposed to perhaps some information that they are not ready to accept. So this is why the rationale behind why we have censorship and why censorship is still relevant in our society today. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable members, we have come to the end of question time. I will therefore look favourably to a motion to suspend this session for an early lunch. Would there be such a motion? That of the opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We are adjourned for an early lunch.